Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Conway City Council meeting. We proceed each meeting with a word of prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you like, please feel free to join us. And Miss Isby, if I could ask you to word our prayer, please, ma'am.
Sure. If you'll bow with me. Our gracious Father, we thank you for all the blessings that you've given us. We thank you, Lord, for this city that you've made us to be stewards over. We just ask, Lord, that during this particular time of COVID, we pray a special prayer for those who are dealing with COVID, the family members, all of those. And we just ask, Lord, for your protection over us as well as this city. And we just pray, Lord, that everything that we do will be pleasing and the wording will be pleasing to you as well. Bless this meeting and bless us. In your name we pray. Amen.
We'll now call this meeting to order. Mr. Garrett, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hawkins?
Here.
Mr. Grimes?
Here.
Mr. Pruitt?
Here.
Ms. Mel?
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Ms. Isby?
Here.
All right. You should have received a copy of the January 12th City Council minutes. Any corrections, changes, or comments?
Make a motion for approval as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0. Our first up tonight, we have our, before we start, I've asked department heads to start sending us compliments they receive on our employees citywide. And tonight I got a couple from the Conway Fire Chief, Mike Winter. I'm not going to read, I'll read the names of the firefighters. This is for Captain Jason Fulfer, firefighter engineer Spencer Carden, and John Lynn. I'm just going to give the last part of the letter. It says, I wanted you to know that our family appreciates the work you all to do to serve our community with such compassion. I know it meant the world to us. We lost my stepdad 16 days after the call. And out of all the medical professionals we met through that journey, our Conway firefighters were the most professional and kindest. Each time I pass that fire station, I'm reminded of the goodness that is still in the world and our community's heroes. And the second one is for Captain Ferris Park and firefighter Hunter Havens. It says they are true professionals who acted as though it was their pleasure to help us. Although my husband is a large man, they had no difficulty assisting him and had him off the floor in a matter of moments. They were extremely kind and compassionate while also helping him to maintain his dignity by speaking to him directly and assuring him that they were happy to be there to help. Also appreciated them for taking the time to question him about how he was feeling and offering to get their supplemental oxygen to help if he felt it needed. They offered to call an ambulance and ask if there was anything else they could do for us. These two men provide exemplary service in our time of need, and please let them know how much we appreciate that. So to the Conway firefighters that were named that, we appreciate the great job you do every day. First up, we have the monthly financials ending with December 31st. Mr. Winningham, you are up, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, we ended up this year pretty well, all things considered. I mean, you think back about, this time in 2020, we were just first starting to hear about COVID-19. And as we got into, February and March and April, we, heard projections, for anywhere from, being sales tax budgets and city budgets could be down anywhere from, 10 to 15 to 20, 25%. And we certainly did have some areas that were down, but if you look at our sales tax, which, we kind of live and die by the sales tax, we ended up for the year up just about 5%. For the month of December, we were up a little over 7%. And in dollars, you can see there in that over under budget columns, just over $1 million over budget is what we brought in on sales tax. Permits also had a good year. We continue to hear how the building industry is, the residential and I think commercial as well is really going right now in Conway. You can see that our permit revenue was up about 12% over what we had budgeted for it. And then the areas where you can kind of see where we were down, you might look at parks and beverage tax, which those two are kind of related. As we have more folks in town going to our sporting events, you'll see that beverage tax number sometimes start to increase. But beverage tax down, of course, due to the limited capacity of restaurants, and also, there for a while they were just completely closed. And our parks revenue, that revenue number there is down because of our programs that were limited that we didn't have back in the spring. So looking at our revenues, you look in that far right corner, 100%, we hit that number pretty good, right on the nose for our revenues. And as I said, we kind of live and die by the sales tax. If you look at the bottom line, that 3.3 million that we added back into the general fund at the end of the year, you can see the footnote there that a large portion of that is due to the CARES Act funding that we received. But if you back out that 2.3 million that we got from CARES Act, we're sitting at right about $1 million that would have come in the fund balance, which is just about what we were up in sales tax. So it's interesting how that shakes out for us. Expenditure wise, we were down compared to last year. The mayor had a spending freeze in effect for the whole year, pretty much. If you don't factor in that CARES Act receipt, we were down about 6%. But if you do factor it in, which that's, when it's all said and done, that's what's going to show is that CARES Act reflected there. We were down about 13% in expenditures. And since this being year end, I might just a couple extra comments I don't normally do. If you look at the balance sheet for the general fund, you can see our operating cash is up quite a bit higher than normal, again, because of the CARES Act reimbursement we received. And then you can see that second line, the reserve cash is up above what it has been this year because we made our $250,000 contribution back to that account, which is the first of 4 contributions intended to get that number back up to $2 million. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the general fund before we move forward? Street fund, not a lot to talk about there. If you compare expenditures here to last year, that we were actually up in expenditures, or I'm sorry, we were down significantly, but that number is a little bit overstated because in 2019, towards the end of the year, we had a couple of pretty big projects that we were paying bills on. So, still good expenditure wise, only spent 75% of their budget, which looks like they certainly were following the spending freeze that we had in place. And then the revenues kind of generally follow the same patterns as we see in the general fund. Sales tax was up. And then, I didn't mention this in the general fund, but we will still have, some year-end accruals and whatnot that'll change the state turnback and the ad valorem numbers. Those will change a little bit before the final report is issued. Any questions or comments on street fund before we move forward? We'll move on to sanitation. Sanitation ended up having a good year as well. We kind of thought sanitation fee collection might be down because of, businesses having reduced operating hours and reduced capacities, which would result in, less trash. But, we budgeted 9.1 million, brought in 9.6. So, I talked to Mr. Hopper yesterday and today, and again, he kind of echoed the conversation around the building permits. We have quite a bit more residential pickups that we're adding on each year. And he said we're increasing our roll-off business as well. So I think we have some commercial businesses in town that are starting to switch over and use us as opposed to paying for a private pickup. So the bottom line there looks great. 2.2 million is going back into the fund balance there. If you'll notice the capital outlay expenditures, they only spend about half of their budget. And that's a good part of the reason for that $2.2 million bottom line. And we just want to point out that those capital purchases still need to be made. They're going to be looking at buying some trucks and whatnot this year. So
Joe and I visited this week, and he will be coming to the council here in the next few meetings to discuss some of his capital outlays.
Right. Yeah. He's got some vehicle budget already in 2021, but I think he may get through that pretty quick with all the purchases he needs to make. So at that time, he'll be back in front of the council. Anything on the sanitation fund before we move forward? Our last major operating fund we look at every month is the airport. And you can see there some reduced numbers in our fuel sales. I think related to the economy in a sense. Folks not out doing as much flying, maybe a little bit less business travel than what's normal, but overall bottom line is pretty good. They're putting a little over $100,000 back into their fund balance at the end of the year. And you can see there their expenditures, they really kept a tight grip on those expenditures as well. Only spent 69% of their budget there. And that concludes my comments on December 2020 financials, and I'd be happy to take any questions or discuss anything further if anybody would like to.
I make a motion to approve the monthly financials.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the monthly financials, which ended December 31st of 2020. I would like to express my gratitude to all the department heads for working hard to stay on top of their expenditures. And Mr. Winningham does a good job riding herd. He does. I know, Tyler, you think it's hard to believe I said something nice about you, but you do a good job in your position, and you are appreciated.
Thank you. I'm just glad we're streaming this live tonight, Mayor.
Touche.
Mr. Mayor, I can remember going to Mr. Winningham's office when COVID hit and expressing my thought that we'd be lucky to come in at the end of the year 20% under where we came in. You remember that, Mr. Winningham?
Yes, sir. Sure do.
I apologize to you. You told me you didn't think that was going to happen. And fortunately, we ended up the year very, very good.
We did. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed.
Passes 8-0. Thank you, Mr. Winningham. Next up, we have community development. Mr. Hawkins, we'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The very first item on the agenda tonight is an ordinance to approve a private club permit. But before we get to this, I would like to ask that we table this at this point in time. And the reason that I ask that we table this is because there is a question as to one of the people that is on the application, listed as the vice president of this club, who has or is behind on A&P sales taxes with at least one other location. Ms. Isby, I think that you're fairly familiar with this person. And
Yes.
I would suggest that at this point in time, that because of that, if nothing else, we hold this in committee until we can get straight with that. Is that okay, Counselor?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table this ordinance to approve a private club permit on a property on Skyline Drive. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so that is tabled. All right, Mr. Hawkins, number 2.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next item, we have some resolutions for property that has incurred city forces to clean them up. And we will start with a piece of property at 411 South Ash. The resolution is to collect this money, that we place a lien on this property in the amount of $161.29. And the resolution number is R2104.
I make a motion, we waive the 3 readings.
Now this,
Well,
Oh, wait,
it's a
I'm sorry.
resolution.
I make a motion for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve this resolution to place a lien on property located at 411 South Ash in the amount of $161.29. Is there anyone from this property that would like to speak to this? Okay, no one speak for it. Any further discussion from the council? Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed.
Passes 8-0.
What was that resolution number, Mr. Garrett? Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution to place liens on property as a result of incurred expenses by the city. This particular property is at 1824 South Boulevard. The city has incurred $187.29 in expenses cleaning up this property. And is there someone online that would like to speak to this, either an owner or representative of an owner at 1824 South Boulevard? I see Mr. Clausen sitting in the background, waiting very patiently. Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Mr. Mayor, I don't see or hear anybody for that piece of property. The resolution is R2105.
I
Make
make
a
a motion for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution to place a lien on property located at 1824 South Boulevard in the amount of $187.29. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution requesting the Faulkner County Tax Collector place a lien on property as a result of incurred expenses by the city. This particular location is 217 Davis Street. At this point in time, the city has incurred $457.76 of expenses. And then the resolution to read, first of all, is there an owner or representative of an owner of 217 Davis Street with us tonight? Mr. Mayor, I don't see or hear of anyone. So this resolution is R2106.
Make a motion for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution, I finally got that out, to place a lien on property located at 217 Davis Street in the amount of $457.76. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Final item, Mr. Mayor, our final part of this particular part of the agenda is to ask for a lien placed on property at 135 Eve Lane. At this point in time, city forces have expended $506.28 of their time and energy to get this cleaned up. Is there an owner or representative of an owner from 135 Eve Lane in Conway with us this evening? Mr. Mayor, I don't see or hear of anyone from that location, so we have the resolution to be read.
Make a motion for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution to place a lien on property located at 135 East Main in the amount of 50628. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Garrett.
So that'd be resolution R2107. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance appropriating funds from the Arkansas Department of Transportation for the Oak Street and I-40 improvements project for the Transportation Department. And we have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance number 02114.
Make a motion, we waive the three readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the three readings. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 8-0. Mr. Vinson, would you like to bring the council up to speed on this?
I don't see. This is just an accounting.
It is. I just didn't. All right. Now I'll take a motion to adopt, council.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to approve the funds from Arkansas Department of Transportation for the Oak Street and I-40 improvement projects. Mr. Garrett, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Mr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Mel.
Aye.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution authorizing the city to enter into an agreement with Southeast Realty LLC for completion of the Donaghy Avenue Project Phase 1. And we have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance R2108.
Make a motion, we waive the three readings.
It's actually a
A
resolution.
yeah.
Could it be an ordinance?
I'm sorry.
It's a
Does it-
resolution.
It is a resolution, yes.
Yes.
I make a motion for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution to enter into a settlement agreement for property associated with the Donaghy Avenue project. And I will ask Mr. Finkenbinder to address this for us.
Yeah, so this is for the,
We can't hear him.
Can't
Push the
hear him.
button.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
I've always wanted to say that. So this is a parcel of property that's necessary to finish the end of the Donaghy Phase 1 road project. In particular, as you'll see from the attached diagrams I've attached to the resolution, this is for the roundabout, completion of the roundabout at College and Donaghy Avenue. It does involve acquisition of the property that's shown in the diagram in the crosshatched. There are two sections to that. I just wanted to make sure everybody. So we've got two sections on the first attachment. The first are diagonal lines. It's marked by diagonal lines. It's sort of an L-shaped. That is the part of the property the city is taking for completion of the roundabout. The crosshatched section adjoining that is a temporary construction easement, meaning that once the roundabout goes in, that crosshatched area is returned to the property owner. In this particular case, we had to file a condemnation action. We were not able to reach an agreement over price with the property owner, and we've had some pretty protracted litigation so far. I know Chuck and I spent a good deal of time in court just getting the immediate access to the property so that the Department of Transportation could stay on task and on target. So that immediate order was signed. It was granted the city immediate access. The court at that time, at the conclusion of the hearing, following all the testimony, issued an order directing the city to deposit $300,000 into the registry of the court pending a final outcome. And Chuck before me and I continue to believe that the 225 could resolve the litigation for less than that amount, but we don't advocate going any over that. So we think that should be the limit.
Thank you, Mr. Finkenbinder. Council, any questions for Mr. Finkenbinder? Then I'll take a motion.
We had a motion.
I'm sorry. We have a
Yes.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? You're right. Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Mr. Garrett, would you call the roll, please? Call the vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to annex 66.87 acres south of Nutter Chapel Road, east of Ridgedale Circle. And it will be annexed as R1 property. We have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 02115.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 8-0. Mr. Walden, would you bring the folks at home that are watching the council meeting tonight up to speed on a little bit of information on what's going on here, please, sir?
Yes, so this annexation is for a pending application that the planning department has for 154 lot subdivision. Actually, the first phase, which was 51 lots, was approved at the last planning commission meeting. This area will take access from Ridgedale Circle, which is outside the city, and also Nutter's Chapel Road to the north. So it's directly adjacent to the golf course, just to the west of that property. But they brought this in to develop it for a single family subdivision. Although I've always wanted to say that there's going to be another church built on Nutter Chapel Road, but that's a corny dad joke. So.
It was. That was bad. That was bad.
Hey, I like it.
That was bad. Council's back to you. If you any other questions?
Don't quit.
I
your
make a
day
motion
job.
for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to annex 66.87 acres south of Nutter Chapel Road, east of Ridgedale Circle. Any further discussion? And no more jokes, Mr. Walden. Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone 2.32 acres located at the terminus of Sage Grass Drive, south of South Sterling subdivision from R1 to a PUD. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on January 19th of this year. And at that time, the vote was 8-0 to send this to City Council with a recommendation of approval, along with a list of 16, count them, 16 conditions there that you see. And I'll let you take a look at them, but they're there, I promise you. And we have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 02116.
Make a
Make a
motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 8-0. Mr. Walden, would you, for the citizens that are watching at home, would you explain what we're doing here from going from R1 to a PUD and maybe highlight some of the conditional uses?
Yes, so the sort of the rezoning of this is to allow a 15 lot subdivision, which is essentially an extension of the South Sterling PUD. With that, the present zoning is a single family zoning. This will allow, it would be a slightly denser development within that, similar to one of the developments that you saw last council meeting. With this, the main conditions, these would be restricted to single family residential. We would have requirements that the exterior be composed of brick, rock, or hardy board or similar, minimum 812 roof pitch, architectural shingle roofing only. Each home would be different. So you can tell with a lot of this is intended to as part of the trade-off of the smaller lots, having a sort of a more unique or a certain standard for the type of development that goes in there. So,
Thank you, Mr. Walden.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to rezone property located on Sagegrass Drive, south of South Sterling subdivision from R1 to a PUD. Any further discussion or questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Exactly where is this? I'm trying to figure it out.
so it is off South Donaghy.
I live on Sagegrass. That's what I'm trying to find out. Does it butt up to the subdivision?
You know where where Sagegrass Drive terminates, Mr. Jones?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's south of there. Does that sound right, Mr. Walden?
It's at the very north end.
All right. Well, I got my end drawn, but I was right on the end of where it
Yeah, I know.
terminates.
That's where the road ends.
Mhm.
Okay, quick question. Has anybody out there had anything to say about this? Because I know it's going to be right up against some people's houses out there.
We did not receive comments about it.
But everybody was notified?
Correct, yes. Yes, so with this being a PUD, we had to have, before the public hearing at the Planning Commission meeting, we had a public involvement meeting online via Zoom. We didn't have any comments then. We didn't have anybody speak in opposition at the Planning Commission either.
Not being a negative person, but this stuff like this on Zoom, it's older people live down and they have no clue. I don't know what to say about it, but I know it's going to be right up against the Morgan's and them house at the end of this street. And I it's just, and I'm not even sure. Well, I guess they didn't say anything, but I'm just not sure they didn't know about it, but I can't argue. But I know it's just older people at the end of that street, and Zoom is probably beyond them.
Certainly participating in public meetings, we have had some challenges at times with some folks.
So the next thing, are they planning on opening up that road there? Sagegrass?
No, with the development, so that was an item that was brought up at Planning Commission, was connecting that. It will not connect to it. What will eventually is, as another phase moves on to the west, that Moody Gardens that comes down, that south leg would then tie back out to South Donaghy. So this, essentially the backs of these houses will be adjacent to the sides of those lots directly to the south. So Sagegrass will just terminate into the sort of the end of that subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Walden. Okay, we have a motion. Any further discussion? Okay. We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. There's no further discussion. Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
No.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes.
Aye.
Passes 7-1. Thank you, Mr. Walden. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance rezoning some property, 16.77 acres east of East German Lane, south of Lower Ridge Road. It presently is zoned A1. The requested zoning is R2. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their January 19th meeting this year. And at that time, the commission voted 8-0 that this be forwarded to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance to read for this item. It is ordinance O2117.
Make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the three readings. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 8-0. Mr. Walden, would you explain to the citizens out there what we're doing here, going from A1 to R2, please, sir?
Yes, so this property was annexed recently by Hal Crafton for a development that he is putting out there. We actually have gotten the first phase of that approved, which is just to the east. They are seeking approval with this zoning to go from essentially an agricultural zone, which was just a holding zone, to R2 that would allow duplex residential on that. When it was reviewed at Planning Commission, what we looked at was the existing plan recommendation for that property was for commercial and essentially what we traditional neighborhood, which is intended to be a design more similar to Hendricks Village for that area. Based on the density and the proposed uses of being commercial and a denser mix of different types of residential, we felt that the density was appropriate. So the staff recommended approval, and we didn't receive any comments from the public pertaining to this item either.
Thank you, Mr. Walden.
I make a motion for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion?
Mr. Walden, how big is the easement coming through here on East German Lane to Lower Ridge Road? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I don't. We will, as part of the plating process, be getting additional right of way for that. So it'll meet at least this half of the standards for that. Should be either 80 or 90 feet. So we'd probably be looking at 40 or 45 feet from center line for right of way.
And correct me if I'm wrong, anybody on council or Mr. Walden or Mr. Mayor, anyone that's listening, is this one of the locations that is being looked at for the 64-65 connection?
There's actually, last time I visited with RDOT, we were actually looking at two different locations. One was down East German Lane, and the other one was further east. Mr. Walden, could you answer that a little better than me?
Finley may be able to. I'll be honest.
Skunk Hollow? I'm trying to think what was further.
Yeah, it was out in the Skunk Hollow area. Yes.
Yeah, it was out that way. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, there were, as the mayor said, there were 2 or 3 different locations, and this. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of the study, and I can't remember exactly. I do know one of them was Skunk Hollow. I don't think any of them were on East German. I think there were actually 2 on Skunk Hollow, and then another one that was maybe even further east than that.
East German was the one that they had looked at a number of years earlier, and that actually was taken off was taken out of consideration. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Finley. I don't know that the location of going through the mountain there matters, but that had something to do with it, that location. So that was taken off. That was taken out of consideration even back before I was in office.
Yeah, that's accurate. And that was pretty much the reason for the new study, was that the old location didn't really work anymore. I hope that that RDOT, the study's pretty much concluded, but it hasn't been published. And I hope that RDOT will publish that soon.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Okay. And the ordinance is to rezone 16.77 acres east of East German Lane, south of Lower Ridge Road from A1 to R2. If there's no further discussion, Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Ms. Isby.
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Final item here, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property located at 4725 Prince Street. It currently is zoned A1. The requested zoning is R1. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission on January 19th of 2021, and the vote at that time was 7-0 with one abstention that the request be forwarded to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance to read for this item. It is ordinance 021-18.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0. Mr. Walden, quick explanation, please, sir.
Yes, so it's presently zoned A1, which is agricultural. The site's being used as a single-family home. And the applicant's basically seeking to bring the zoning for the site into compliance or into conformance with the proper zone for the area. So
Good.
I make a motion for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to rezone property located at 4725 Prince Street from A1 to R1. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Grimes,
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins.
Yes.
I'm confused. I think it's an 8-0 vote, but I thought I heard a couple of
Bart,
woof
Whoops.
woof, so I don't know what those are.
Is that a yes or a no?
I think they had a question.
That passes
I
8.
I was trying to get in a couple more votes there.
Thank
Marlon
you, Mr. Hawkins.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Next up, we have Public Service Committee, and we will start that tonight with ordinance appropriating or authorizing, if the council chooses, personnel changes within the physical plant department. Mr. Spencer Clausen, you will, if you would, address this with the council, please, sir.
Can't hear you.
Spencer, you're on mute.
Wait till I tell Chuck.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
you wouldn't do it that way.
He's probably
No,
watching.
I want to thank Tyler, first of all, for helping me get this all together. I'm sure he ducked under his desk every time he seen me calling him. But basically, I've got had enough money in my budget for part-timers. We've got a lot of part-time help seasonally. And what I'm trying to do is just kind of shuffle that over. This is going to be a budget neutral result and be able to add another full-time position for good help year round and add to my team. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get done here tonight.
I make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance authorizing personnel changes within the physical plant department. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you have someone in mind? Are you going to promote someone or bring someone completely new in?
My plan right now, this is kind of an entry-level position. There wouldn't be a promotion into the spot. I was going to bring someone from outside in for it.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Garrett.
This will be ordinance 021-19. Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Mel.
Aye.
Passes 8-0. Next up, we have.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Spencer. You guys do a great job. Next up, we have an accounting ordinance. It's for the sale of property off of Blaney Hill Road. This property is actually, hopefully, the future of the future home of the mountain bike park. And we sold a strip of that land to the adjacent property owner to give them an additional buffer there. They've owned that property there for some time. If y'all pass this ordinance, the funds will go to the Sanitation and Parks Department. It's asking for an ordinance appropriating those funds.
I make a motion to waive 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance, and I have it as ordinance number 021-20.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Isby.
Yes.
Passes 8-0. And our final bit of business tonight is an ordinance to restructure the physical plant department and the planning and development department. There's no increase to the budget. I think Mr. Winningham is going to address this. Mr. Winningham.
Yes, sir. I'm still here. Yeah, so the budget is already reflective of this. We took positions in the permitting and code enforcement department and divided those among physical plant and development.
I'm sorry you broke up there at the very last, Mr. Winningham.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so we took the former code enforcement and permits department and divided it up and separated those employees, some into the physical plant department and then some into the planning and development department. And this ordinance is to officially authorize that move.
Correct.
I make a motion to waive 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance as 02121.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
You should have known. I'm gonna do better. I promise. In 2000.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Quit West. We just shuffling people around. Is there any change in salary, anything?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Just had to ask. I'm sorry.
That's
I want
okay.
to ask you another question tonight.
You don't you say that. You know you're going to.
This is the
The
last
last item.
item.
There'll be a question that'll come up.
Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Isby.
Yes.
Passes 8-0. That's all the business we have tonight. We will have a committee meeting at the next council meeting. So I guess we will have it. We'll change our time for our council meeting. I think that's what we agreed to. Our committee meeting will be at 5:30, which means our council meeting will be at 6:30. I will talk to James and Finley and find out if they think that we can get everything done we need to in 30 minutes. If we do, then we won't have to change times. What we're going to talk about is some grants that are coming up this year. And we need to go ahead and get that out of the way and figure out what we as a city are going to do. So I'll get Felicia to get you our starting time, but we will have a committee meeting prior to our next council meeting. That's all we
Make a
have.
motion to adjourn.
Wait, Mr. Mayor, one
Yes,
thing,
ma'am.
I want to call you out and thank you
Okay.
for helping out with the Conway Area Youth Leadership, giving up a part of your Saturday morning, and Evan Pence. Mr. Finkenbeiner did a great job coordinating it this year, and we got the highest scores for that
Get out.
session from the students. So
It's probably because I
you
talked the least this year than I ever have.
No, I think it's when you played one of the people in the audience for the council meeting. I think they got a kick out of that. So, but it really, and I appreciate that because that's giving up a Saturday morning, but the kids really did enjoy it.
Well, thank you. And they were a great group. I promise you, I enjoyed it a lot better on that side of the table. That was fun.
I should have taped it. I could have played it for the council. They would have gotten a kick out of it.
I just want to let Miss Mill know that I did give Evan Sunday off.
That was so kind of you.
That's good. Well, council, we are adjourned. The only thing I've got going forward is whatever day Mr. Jones is working in Menifee, I'm planning on flying through there.
Go ahead. We'll stop you. We'll pull you over.
Go Tom
License
Brady
registration, please.
out there. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
All right. Miss you
Bye
guys.
bye.
Miss y'all.
Bye-bye.